Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much for inviting me to speak at TEDxTokyo. I am Yoshiharu Habu. I usually don't speak. I'm always silent in thought, so I'm not very good at speaking like this. But since I was invited, I created my own speech, which I hope you will enjoy today. So today I would like to talk about what the process is taken by a shogi player. In the game of shogi, a fundamental rule of a player is what we call yomi, which is simulating the next move and the next move. And the first basic rule in shogi is what we call sante no yomi, which is reading 3 moves ahead. You see 3 pieces here. So you make a choice, your opponent counters that with the next piece, and then you make your next choice, and that is what we call sante no yomi. And this is, of course, not applicable only to shogi, but you can apply this to your everyday life as well. And I think you are actually doing this thought process in everyday life as well. So first, you usually don't think of only one option. You usually compare at least 2 choices, and you compare those 2 options. For example, you have decided to participate in TEDxTokyo today. Your first option would be to participate in TEDxTokyo, and therefore, number 2, you are inspired, and therefore you come up with a new idea from that inspiration, and you make it of use in your everyday life. Or you could have decided, okay, I will not participate in TEDxTokyo today, so you don't get inspired, and you are still stuck in a rut. So comparing these 2, you finally decide, it's going to be fun, so I'm going to TEDxTokyo. This could be, this is not something that you'll probably jot down on your notes. It could have been intuitive, but I think this is the kind of thought process that you went through. But even in these 3 seemingly simplistic choices, there is a blind spot, and that is the second move. You may think, I want to do this, I want to do that, and that is, of course, your wish, but there is, of course, your opponent, or in business, there is your client, and so you have to read ahead into the mind of another. For example, so let's say you're in a business negotiation, and you're trying to sell your product by proposing a discount. The 3 moves that you would picture would be, first, you offer a discount. Number 2, your client is happy. Number 3, you close the deal. And that would be your 3 steps that you could anticipate. But number 2 could be a blind spot because you could be making a decision based on your own frame of reference. Your opponent, your client, could be looking into the value. He could be looking into consistency or quality. So your client might not be interested in a discount. So if you end up making decisions on your own frame of reference, it could prove useless. And if you make a mistake, if you misread wrongly into the second move, your analysis from then on will be useless. It will not be accurate. It is like looking at the branches of a tree. And these branches, the number of these branches are an infinite number of possibilities, and you will never be able to arrive at a conclusion if you do this. So what you use is what we call a chokan or fukan, which is a bird's eye point of view. It is as if a bird is looking down at the ground from high above, and you zero in on the point or the certain decision that you want to make, but you do this completely intuitively. You can do this intuitively by looking at what the current was like up to that point, or what kind of policy or strategy you would like to shift to from that point on. So the basic direction or the strategy or the policy you want to take is decided upon very intuitively, and therefore if you have that fixed, then you'll be able to shave off pointless analyses after that. For example, you may have looked at a map to come to this venue and knew that it was in Shibuya. So you didn't have to make any detours, you weren't lost in coming to this venue. So that is what I mean when I talk about intuition. But when it comes to taking a bird's eye point of view, as I mentioned, it's intuitive. It's done intuitively and it's very convenient. But you can't rely only on that because, as I mentioned before, the map. You may have been able to come to Shibuya looking at the map, but at the end, you have to take step by step. You'd have to take the escalator, you have to take the elevator to be able to finally arrive at this auditorium where you're here today. So, intuition is, of course, very important. You can jump in your thought process using intuition, but you need to make that logical approach, as I mentioned, in the three-step process. This intuition is also very useful in trying to avoid what we call the jirihin, which is a slow descent. Jirihin is not a very common term learned, but it's a situation it's a slow descent. It's a situation where you have no chance of winning no matter how many moves you make. So in order to avoid this, by using your bird's eye approach, by using your intuition, you can tell what move will cause or will trigger that slow descent. So you can use your intuition to take that other option. This intuition and this logic is, you have to use both of them, and you have to connect these two in each situation, in each point in a game, in order to make a decisive decision that will prove useful in the end. There is so much information in the world, and you may all be at a loss as to which information to select, because there are so many options, and you have to narrow it down to one decision, and that means that there is that much more regret. So in order to avoid that regret, you have to be able to look at the decisions that you haven't made objectively, and you cannot be too pessimistic about the decisions that you have made. Of course, avoiding risk is very important, but sometimes you have to objectively, and not emotionally, but objectively and boldly do risk-taking. There are, of course, worries in the future, but not all of them are going to come true. So in order to make these decisions, you have to use your logic and also your intuition, your bird's eye point of view, in order to make sound decisions in any points in life or in your everyday life. I do hope that today will prove a very fruitful day for you. Thank you very much.